Hey everyone, I hope you can excuse the less than formal nature of my garb here. I have a few basic videos to make, some of which are social issues, some of which are stuff that could impact society and maybe even some issues in the future. Um, I want to start with an addendum to a story that I had talked about uh, a while back, which was where police were wanting to waste time trying to figure out if the shooter at the Sandy Hook school, remember, I'm omitting names in most cases, although this one I'm going to make a slight exception, otherwise you're not going to know who I'm talking about in parts. Because I do not want to uphold the infamy and names of the people who have done atrocious things. In this case, very much to be even more famous than another serial killer. So while the police were wasting their time in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, trying to figure out if the shooter of the Sandy Hook Elementary School was emulating a video game. Something that is subjective, and seriously, you cannot prove that. But here's maybe not what that investigation brought up, but here's the motive of that shooter from that particular massacre. Name omitted motives. Outkill Norway shooter. Sandy Hook gunman was obsessed with Breivik. Now again, I'm breaking the rule in terms of the other person involved in this story because otherwise, again, I think for the sake of the story and the narrative, you're not going to know who I'm talking about outside of the main person we're focusing on, which was the shooter at Sandy Hook. Name omitted drew motivation from Norway's most notorious mass murderer when he opened fire at Sandy Hook Elementary School. CBS News reports by way of two sources. The officials who have been briefed on the investigation say name omitted considered himself in competition with Anders Breivik, who bombed and gunned down 77 people in July of 2011. Wanting to outkill Breivik, name omitted picked Sandy Hook as the quote easiest target end quote, containing quote largest cluster of people end quote. Name omitted had honed his shooting skills by obsessively playing games in his basement of his family's home. Objection, Your Honor. Conjecture. You don't know that. Moreover, the main thing that name omitted's closest people said that he was playing was Dynasty Warriors. Dynasty Warriors is not exactly a game you play when you're training to kill people. Even Breivik, even frickin' Breivik, he had bought a special site and was using it in conjunction with, I believe, a light gun or something of this nature in which to do some actual, semi-actual training. But that's not training. It's a video game. Even light gun games are notoriously bad in terms of their calibration. I mean, not bad, but they're not accurate. You're not going to use that for shooting practice. When it's been talked about with Lanza, dang it. When it's been talked about the Sandy Hook shooting, his mom took him to a shooting range. That would have way more of an impact on training than Call of Duty. Although Call of Duty isn't brought up. Once again, names of games have not been brought up. And when you have no names for these games, you can make whatever claims you want, and nobody can check out your claims on this. That is why names matter. If you're going to try to say that name omitted was practicing to shoot grade schoolers By playing Dynasty Warriors, you are an idiot and a scapegoater who has not even a single slightest bit of a point, especially not in the idea of emulating a video game. Can you understand now why I was angry at this story and this police force? Because they're wasting time going after leads that basically try to once again paint the idea that video games are murder simulators. Grow up. And moreover, do your dang job. This is not even close to. You wanted a motive. You wanted a why did name omitted do what he did? He did it because of copycatting, because he wants to outdo a killer from Norway, because he wanted a bigger body count, because he wanted to be known. He wanted to be even more infamous than the Norway killer. You wanted motives. None of this, absolutely none of this, points to a video game. That's why the rest of this article by Neil Colgrass, who should know better, is even more infuriating. And may have considered his death toll of 6 adults and 20 first graders to be kind of a score. You don't know that. You're talking objectively about a subjective matter. We don't know. We can't know that. You're basically trying to amp it up because right now the popular thing to do is to beat up on video games, despite the fact that there isn't a shred of proof, scientific or otherwise, outside of people trying to stretch whatever faint readings they may have been able to come up with to try to prove that video games have a direct link to violence. You have the motive. You have everything except for a clear line between name omitted and video games and real life violence. And yet you're continuing to try to say, you're saying something that cannot be substantiated. You're saying something that is conjecture at best and just out and out fabrication at worst, and trying to say, see, it's them video games that's doing all the harm. It's them video games that's doing all that damage. Again, just glossing over that if video game violence is even, or media violence at all, is even slightly related to real life violence. Although they'll say aggression, because they can't prove violence, but they could prove aggression. And they can't even really prove that. They can prove activation. They can prove activity in the aggression centers of our brain. That is it. But when you're talking about things, the word violence and aggression can be so easily swapped out to try to make a point that we're just all angrier all the time because of our steady diet of video games and violence. Prove it. For the umpteenth time, I'm sick of being a broken record and asking for the antis in this movement to prove their points. This is talking out of somebody's behind. It really is. He also practiced shooting real guns with his mother at a shooting range. Oh no, but we're not going to look at that, are we? We're going to put that in the footnotes and act like that had nothing to do with this whatsoever. That any accuracy that name omitted may have acquired has to be from the video games, because yes, thanks to Grand Theft Auto, I can fly and drive any vehicle ever made in any make or model, even stick. And thanks to Grand Theft Auto, I am so proficient in any kind of firearm. RPGs, please, that's for noobs, but I could do it if I needed to. And I know that if I die, I just respawn. Because, you know, video games, right? This is so far beyond ridiculous. Sources were light on details, but said investigators have uncovered evidence of name omitted's obsession with Breivik, but Lieutenant J. Paul Vance told CBS News that the investigation is ongoing, that any revelations about motive are just speculation. Oh, okay, so you uncover evidence that this person wanted to outdo somebody from all the way across the world, and you see no problem with infamy. You see no problem with splashing their faces and names all over the media and holding them up as sort of an anti-god to a degree, compared to like our celebrities or what have you. And then you want to say, no, 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 ignore that, ignore that. No, what you need to pay attention to is the fact that name omitted played video games. And that has to be the culprit. We have to find that link. Won't somebody please think of the children? Well, apparently name omitted as well as Breivik we're thinking a little too much about the children, but I digress. This is stupid. This is not how grown adults are supposed to operate. What happened to that LA noir style of figuring out the clues, getting away from the red herrings, and actually getting to the heart of the investigations, and actually wanting to be interested in what was the actual cause and effect, not what we think or what we want to think is the cause and effect. I'm so sick and tired of games being the scapegoat, the thing that we beat up on because, mainly because we don't agree with it, mainly because we feel like, thanks to the selective ADD of media that latches on to certain stories and then drops them at the drop of a hat, making it seem like there's rises and falls, dramatic rises and falls of things like youth violence or massacres or what have you. That's not reflective in the data, but does anybody care about that? Well, obviously not, as I've learned from many, many different social topics I've talked about. You don't care about the reality. You don't care who gets hurt as long as the people you don't like the most get hurt in the process. Remind me again how old most of you are.